Being a single father was not something I planned for or even feared, as I never thought I would be one. I believed that I had established a long-term relationship with Isabella, whom I had known since high school. Despite all the odds, we managed to endure the careless years of youthful love. We made it to marriage, and at the time, it felt like a romance film. Two individuals drawn to each other despite their differences. Despite the world's volatility, we had love, or at least I believed we did. We were reckless, young, and full of dreams. I was the stable ground beneath her, and she was the fire. We balanced one another, or so I thought. When Isabella wanted something, she always managed to obtain it. It started small, fancy handbags, pricey shoes, perfume. But it gradually escalated. I was prepared to be the husband who ensured she never had to hear the word no, because I thought she deserved kindness. At first I told myself it was charming, but things didn't turn out that way. Her excitement was evident whenever she entered a room with her latest acquisition, spinning around like a child flaunting a prize. But eventually, the bills mounted. Late-night arguments turned into rent disputes. Credit card bills piled up, oppressive in their weight. Yet, despite my best efforts to reason with her, Isabella always had an explanation. "I just want to keep up with the other moms and their kids. You have no idea how important appearances are," she said. But I did. And I knew I deserved better than a life where we were barely getting by. Each time she used my card to buy things we couldn't afford, I lost a little more: money, control, and a sense of my own life. Then, one night, I woke up to find the space next to me empty. I was cold in bed, blinking drowsily, assuming she had gone to the bathroom. But the silence in the house told me otherwise. When I turned over, I saw a folded note on her pillow. My pulse raced. I reached for it, already dreading what it might say. "You're holding me back from realizing my dreams. I need to travel, and I found someone who wants to do it with me." I let out a sharp breath, my grip tightening on the letter, my vision blurred. "I'll be back in a few years. We can continue where we left off." That sentence almost made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd, offensive even, as if our marriage was a TV show she could pause and resume whenever she pleased. As if my life and our children's lives could just be put on hold. While she disappeared into the sunset with some faceless lover, I stumbled out of bed, my mind reeling. With my phone in hand, I called her, straight to voicemail. Again and again. I searched the house for any sign of her presence. Her closet was half empty. Her vanity was cleared of makeup. Even the perfume bottles were gone. She had planned this. The thought of telling Noah and Ava made my stomach sink. They were fast asleep, their small bodies curled beneath blankets, unaware that their mother had abandoned them without a second thought. How was I supposed to tell them? I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in the living room, staring at my phone, thoughts bouncing between rage and heartbreak. I considered driving to the airport, calling her family, anything to make sense of it. But deep down, I already knew. Isabella was gone. The next morning, my hands trembled as I made breakfast. Pancakes for Ava, scrambled eggs for Noah, just like any other day. My mind replayed the events of the night before on an endless loop. Then came the moment I dreaded. Noah rubbed the sleep from his eyes and asked, "Where's Mommy?" Ava watched me, waiting. I had rehearsed this conversation 100 times in my head. But when I opened my mouth, nothing came out. What was I supposed to say? That she chose to leave? That she promised to return, but with someone else? I exhaled shakily and sat down. Mommy had to go. They only stared at me. Ava was too young to understand. But Noah was sharp. "When is she coming back?" he asked, his small hands clenched into fists. I swallowed hard. "I'm not sure. It wasn't good enough." Did she say goodbye? My lips quivered. I couldn't lie anymore. I just shook my head. Noah turned away, his face unreadable. He left the table without another word. That evening, I heard Ava crying in her room, whispering to her stuffed animal, maybe asking why her mother wasn't home. I sat in the hallway, my head in my hands. I should have seen it coming. The signs had been there, her restlessness, her extravagance, her growing discontent, but I never thought she'd actually do it. And yet she did. She left. The first few weeks were a blur. I moved through life on autopilot, going through the motions of fatherhood while my thoughts raced with unanswered questions. Why did she leave? Why? Weren't we enough? But no answer would have sufficed. And even if there was one, I couldn't waste time searching for it because I had 2 children who needed me. The first challenge was money. Before Isabella left, things were already tight. I was working hard, but she spent faster than I could earn. Designer clothes, lavish dinners, weekend getaways. I had tried to keep up, taking on extra shifts, cutting, my own expenses, hoping she'd outgrow the habit. But now, it was just me. And suddenly, there was more money. For the first time, I sat down with a notebook and my bank statements. Half of our expenses were unpaid. Half of our money was gone. No, more reckless spending. No more vacations we couldn't afford. No more draining my bank account to keep up with Isabella's illusion of wealth. I refinanced the mortgage, created a strict budget, and cut back where I could. It wasn't easy, but every month that passed, I felt stronger. The second challenge was parenting alone. Before, Isabella had packed lunches, signed permission slips, and handled the daily chaos. Now, it was all on me. At first, I forgot Noah's soccer practice. I packed Ava the wrong lunch. I made mistakes, but I learned. I adjusted, and one evening, about 2 months after Isabella left, I found something on Noah's notebook, 4 words, scrawled in his messy handwriting. Mom left, but Dad stayed. Those words hit me harder than anything. I wasn't perfect, but I showed up, and for my kids, that was enough. The third challenge was letting go of Isabella. For months, I held on to the hope that she might come back, but she never called, never sent a birthday card, never asked about the kids. Eventually, they stopped asking about her, and when they did, I knew it was time to move on. I filed for divorce. A year of abandonment was all it took. The papers arrived in the mail, and just like that, our marriage was officially over. I sold the house, moved the kids to Ridgewood Falls, a quiet town, a fresh start, and for the first time in years, I was happy. 3 years passed. Noah thrived. Ava adjusted. And then, on an ordinary Saturday morning, as I sipped my coffee on the porch, I heard footsteps on the dirt path. At first, I thought it was a neighbor, but when I looked up, my stomach dropped. It was Isabella, dressed in designer. Clothes, sunglasses perched on her head, that same self-assured smirk on her lips, like nothing had ever happened. She smiled. Hello. There was nothing. I tilted my head. But you think you can just cut me off? She swallowed, and her eyes flashed with something dark. I believe her lips curved into a harsh shape. We'll see what happens. As I sat there that night, I realized this wasn't the last warning. Noah stepped outside and sat next to me on the porch as we watched the sun set over the lake. Shek, are you gone? He asked. No, buddy, Shek's not. He was silent for a while. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. Then he glanced at me and said, She's going to try something, isn't she? I looked at him, my heart heavy. I think he clenched his jaw. Because Shek wasn't taking us, Dad. I put my hand on his shoulder, feeling the weight of how much he had matured, how much he still needed to mature because of her. She's not, he murmured, exhaling and nodding before saying, Good. He sat there for a while, and long after he went inside, I was already preparing myself. I had spent 6 years rebuilding my life, fighting for peace, and I wasn't going to let Isabella take that away from me. I knew she wouldn't go without a struggle. She wasn't the type to leave empty-handed, especially once she had convinced herself she was owed something, but I didn't realize just how far she would go. Her letter arrived on a Wednesday, a formal envelope, a notice of custody petition in bold black text. I stared at it. My fingers tightened. My breath caught in my throat. I ripped it open on the porch, my eyes scanning the words. Disbelief turned to anger. She wasn't asking for visitation. She was suing for custody. Full custody. After 6 years of total silence. She had the audacity to say she deserved to take them away from me, like she hadn't left them. My fists clenched around the paper. My heart pounded in my ears. I felt it. Entitlement, arrogance, pure delusion. I had seen Isabella do terrible things. But this was the final battle. I wasted no time. The next morning, I was pacing in my lawyer's office as he read over the petition. He sighed. "I won't lie to you, Caleb. This isn't as clear-cut as you think." I stopped pacing, groaned, slammed the papers down. "You're talking about the fact that she left them?" He nodded. "Sheck's been gone for 6 years. You have full custody. But courts favor reunification, especially with mothers. If she looks good on paper, if she convinces them she's changed, she could get shared custody." The words made me sick, because Isabella knew what kind of mother she had been. She wasn't fighting for them out of love. She was fighting because she had nothing else. I shook my head. No way. Sheck's not getting them. The day of the hearing arrived. When I walked into that courtroom, I knew this wasn't just a legal case. It was a war. Isabella was already there, sitting primly next to her lawyer. She wasn't wearing anything flashy. Her hair was pulled back in a demure style, modest jewelry, cheap heels. She was playing a role, the picture of a mature, responsible mother. She wanted to look like she belonged here, like she deserved to see them again. I clenched my fists. She was acting, but I wasn't going to let her win. The judge entered. The case began. Isabella's lawyer spoke first. "Your Honor, my client has spent the last 6 years bettering herself. She deeply regrets her past mistakes. She's not here to change the past, but to build a future with her children." I nearly laughed, but I stayed silent. Isabella dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Her voice trembled. "It was the hardest decision I ever made. But I fought. I struggled. I worked to be the mother they deserve, and now all I want is the chance to be in their lives again." She was good. I watched the judge closely. His face was unreadable, and for the first time, I worried. Was she winning? Then it was my turn. I took a breath, stepped forward. "Your Honor," I began, my voice firm, "I'm not here to stop my kids from seeing their mother. I'm here because I know who she is, and I won't let her hurt them again." I turned to Isabella. She didn't flinch. She didn't leave to work. I continued. "She left because she was done being a mother. She found someone else, decided our children didn't fit into her life anymore." I reached into my folder, pulled out printed copies, photos, social media posts, pictures of Isabella over the last 6 years, luxury resorts, yachts, nightclubs, different men in every shot. I handed them to the judge. She says she was struggling. I looked at Isabella. "She's lying." The courtroom went silent. My kids cried for her. They asked for her, but she never called, never checked in. They had to grieve a mother who was still alive. And now? Now she wanted to take them from the only parent, the only home they had ever known. I looked at the judge, prayed. He sighed, considered both sides. Then finally, "I see no reason to change the current custody arrangement. Full custody remains with the father. Relief flooded through me, but the judge wasn't finished.